You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. The solstice has come and gone. The naked bikers have emerged from their slumber. It can only mean one thing. It's officially summer, which means it's time to get outdoors. So as you prepare for your next hike, we wanted to look back at a conversation we had in April about getting out on the trail and getting left behind. Has something like this ever happened to you? You're on a hike with someone, maybe it's a romantic partner, and you start slowing down. You want to take a break, but your partner is doing great. Your partner wants to push on. Eventually, you are left behind as your partner goes speeding up the hill without you. And this situation, it has consequences for the relationship down the line. If this has happened to you, you're not alone. The phrase Alpine Divorce was coined in a short story about a murderous husband over 100 years ago, but TikTok has lately adopted the label for less dastardly scenarios. In a recent viral post, a woman sobs as she climbs down a mountain saying, "He left me."
I feel so terrible. Like, this is the worst Saturday of my life. I could have been at home.
The video has thousands of comments, many of which share similar stories of being left behind on a trail. But how common is Alpine Divorce? And is it actually a bad thing to spend some time solo on a trail? Here to discuss is Alaina Demopoulos. She wrote about Alpine Divorce for The Guardian. Alaina, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Libby.
So I gave an example there that's gotten a lot of views on TikTok, but just for somebody, who's never heard of this, what is your definition of Alpine Divorce, and where does the phrase come from?
Yes. So speaking in very, very heteronormative terms, it is when a couple, usually a man and a woman, go on a date outdoors, whether that's to hike, to camp. And during the course of their trip, the man starts to go faster than the woman, whether that's on purpose because he's just, this like speedy mountain man, or whether they're just not good communicators and he just goes off and sort of leaves her in the dust. And when that happens, the woman is usually feeling obviously pretty left behind. They're not feeling great. And oftentimes this leads women to sort of rethink larger issues in their relationship and probably end up leaving that man.
So is the divorce part of Alpine Divorce when the guy leaves her in the dust, or is it eventually back down off the trail when the two break up?
That's actually a great question that I have never really thought of. It could be either. I think it probably relates to the man leaving her because it's his fault for doing that.
Why do you think this is suddenly such a big topic of conversation online, Alaina? I mean, you wrote about it, but it's gained so much traction in viral TikToks and then people commenting on them. And it seems like many, many people have a story related to this phenomenon.
Yeah, I think it's a few things. I mean, we noticed during the pandemic in 2020 when there wasn't much to do but go outside, a lot of people got into the outdoors. A lot of people who maybe don't think of themselves as outdoorsy, but say, hey, I'm going to go to this national park, or I'm going to go on this trail that kind of anyone can do. So I think we just have more people going outside now. Also, I think it relates to this saying that kind of went viral a few years ago. It was women talking about how if they were alone in the woods, would they feel safer encountering a man or a bear? And a lot of women said the bear. We choose the bear became this catchphrase because men are very scary when you're alone sometimes. So
I remember that trend. Yeah, the women were like, rather be alone with the bear. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. I think it kind of all goes into now these conversations are sort of exploding about women in the outdoors and our place in it. And and sometimes the way that men use it against us.
Okay, so we asked our listeners, KUOW listeners, to weigh in on if they have ever experienced Alpine Divorce or if they think it's something that people should be worried about at all. And as you can imagine, perspectives really varied. So I want to get your reaction to some things we heard from listeners. This first voicemail is from Anonymous, and they called to tell a story about hiking with their partner around 20 years ago.
And as we were coming back, he went far ahead of me, heading towards the parking lot. And then I heard some growls. Well, the growls turned out to be a very large mountain lion. And it stalked me for about, it took me about maybe 15, 20 minutes to catch up to my partner. Well, we get in the car, he turns on the engine, pulls the lights, and this big mountain lion jumps right in front of the car and down into the ravine.
Okay. Anonymous says she was fine afterwards. She said that the experience did not break her and her partner up, although they did later separate. Alaina, your reaction to that story?
Wow. I mean, I'm happy that everyone was safe. If that happened to me, I would that would come up in every argument I ever had with my partner for the rest of our lives. You left me alone with the mountain lion. Oh my God. But I mean, good for her. She reacted, it sounds like, in a perfect way. And, so that's good. And I'm, wow. Yikes.
Oh, you don't want to take the garbage out? Remember when you left me alone with the mountain lion? Like, That would be my line for absolutely everything. Very glad Anonymous was okay. Okay, this is our next call from Ted from Seattle. He called to share an experience that changed his perspective on Alpine Divorce. He said he was hiking with two friends around Glacier Peak when he and a friend forged ahead. And at one point, they had to travel across this high log to get to their campsite. And 2 hours later, they realized their friend had never followed. Here's Ted.
I went back and saw him at the other side of the log over the stream and just frozen, not able to move, and just looking at me with silence and some condemnation for why we didn't wait for him. The outcome of that incident was I never hiked with Paul again. He just didn't have the trust level. We remained friends, but it definitely impacted the friendship. It's just going to be so much a better day, a better week, and a better life ahead if we learn to wait for others and consider that an obligation of friendship and of any hiking partner.
So, Alaina, as we hear from Ted, Alpine Divorce doesn't just have to be in a heterosexual couple, right? It can be friends.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I mean, kudos to Ted for sort of learning from this. When I spoke to guides, all of them say, the speed of the group is the speed of the slowest member. And if you're a professional guide, that you just know that. So it doesn't help any, amateur people who just want to, flex or show off or just feel like going faster. It doesn't help them, or it doesn't make them seem, like better, more experienced hikers if they're leaving someone behind. That's actually a pretty amateur mistake. But yeah, I mean, you really don't know someone in any sense, I think, until you go camping with them or go hiking with them. That really exposes who people are and relationship dynamics. So you can think you're really close to someone and then have that experience, and it changes things for sure.
And I think Ted's story also underlines how much of a safety risk this is. And as you say, you interviewed professional guides who are saying that you just can't leave a slow person behind. Like, that is dangerous, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's dangerous. And like Ted said, it's just ultimately not as fun. You're going to look back on this hike and all you're going to remember is that, as opposed to you could have had a fun time with your friends. And ultimately you'll be able to share nature with people as opposed to just, going off by yourself and having to experience it solo.
Yeah. And obviously there are different levels of hiking difficulty. And we're talking about, are you out in the wilderness with no supplies, or are you, taking a little 5-mile jaunt up, Cougar Mountain or something like that? Not everybody agrees that you should have to stick close to your hiking partner. Here are a few text messages that we received from listeners, read by some of our Soundside team members.
I have been both the trailblazer, for lack of a better word, and the one left behind. In either scenario, I say it shouldn't be a big deal. You go at your own pace, whatever's comfortable for you, and you periodically get back together. If you're the slower one, you can ask the speedster to schedule stops for reconnecting if it's important to you. But for me, hiking is more about me being with myself in nature and getting in tune with my body.
There's a balance between staying close and following someone and focusing on one's own journey. Like in a museum, how much time and attention, if any, do you or your partner want to focus on particular art pieces, together or separately?
I have a right to push ahead and invigorate my endorphins and rejuvenate my body and mind. If someone wants to drag you down to a lazy pace that doesn't give you the workout you need, they need to get over themselves feeling left behind and push forward and be willing to accept and practice good advice to enhance their hiking prowess. In other words, if some cupcake-eating, diet soda drinking, junk food eater decides that they're gonna go hiking and dump their sloth-like mental problems, there might be more than an Alpine divorce.
Okay, Alaina, I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure if that last texter was trolling us or not, but they seemed very convinced that they were in the right and that leaving somebody behind is their right because they need to get the exercise they need to get. And they're experiencing the hike, you know, as a person who has a certain goal in mind, right? And I think it does speak to something that you wrote about in The Guardian, which is when you start out in a hike, you kind of need to communicate about what the goal is, right?
Definitely. And it really depends on the relationship, right? It seems like maybe all of these people are experienced hikers or enthusiasts. And yeah, if you bring a fellow hiking enthusiast on a hike with you and you split up, probably not much is going to happen. But if you bring a total novice, or if you bring someone who's just expecting like a jaunt in the woods, you do have a responsibility for them in a way that you wouldn't for a friend who is more experienced. So yeah, I think talking ahead of times, I loved the suggestion of having the pre-approved meeting places. I think that's a good way to separate and come back. But that requires, I think, an experienced mind to even think of that, right? Most people just going out for the day might not come up with that.
I just want to have one more listener message weigh in, and I'm going to read it to you because it's very short and sweet. And here it is. Quote, "That's misogyny, isn't it? Not knowing how to do with or considering another person." And I kind of want to look at that more closely because I think some would also argue that it's misogynist to assume that women can't hike by themselves or that they wouldn't be okay on a solo hike. I mean, how do you think gender norms fit into this idea of Alpine divorce? I know you explored that in your piece.
Yeah, I was hesitant to even write about this because I am an outdoorsy person. I'm a woman. I'm a feminist. And I hated how this trend just assumes we're all, delicate flowers who need protecting. And I did see some sort of joking TikToks of women talking about how they would leave their boyfriends behind because they're the faster ones. And in that respect, it was played for humor.
Yeah, you did interview one very accomplished outdoors woman, somebody who's done the Iditarod, who was like, "Oh, if a man wandered away from me in the wilderness, he's going to be in trouble, not me."
Exactly. I don't love how this trend assumes all of that. But I still think there is a reason why it struck such a chord with women. And there is a reason why the majority of these stories deal with men. And I think that is, yes, that's misogyny, that's ego, that's maybe men not prioritizing the communication that they need. And it does speak to that idealized kind of mountain man persona that is so romanticized, even though it's incredibly problematic, right? That sort of lone wolf hiker can get himself and others in a lot of trouble and a lot of danger. I do think there is a healthy dose of misogyny in this trend. Men are endlessly creative in finding ways to inflict pain upon women. So.
I was left behind on a hike once by a man I was dating, and it was Mailbox Peak, which might not mean anything to you, Alaina, if you haven't hiked locally, but it is basically the hike in the Cascades that a lot of people use for training purposes to eventually level up to Rainier. It's one of the steepest hikes. It was before the switchbacks were built into Mailbox for folks who are local and know what that means. And I'm proud of myself that I eventually made it to the top solo, and I found him there and we had a picnic lunch. But did it burrow its way into my mind that I ended up doing that hike pretty much on my own? And Did it long term have an effect on the relationship? Maybe it did. There were no safety issues involved. This was not like a bad person who endangered my life or anything like that. He was just much more fit than I was. Any final thoughts, Alaina, about what you learned about relationships and what it takes to maintain them by reporting on Alpine Divorce?
Well,
or the wilderness, or, being outdoors, or any final thoughts?
Well, I will say, I think the silver lining to this story, and what I appreciated the most in reporting, was in so many cases, and this is in the piece, so many of these stories start out, a man left me behind, I was pretty upset about it, and then this group of women took me in their group, and we went to the top of the mountain together. And so I do love that there are people that will come and help you, and often they might be women, and I think that says a lot about, the community of feminism and womanhood that is so special. So always like to hear about that.
Alaina Demopoulos is a daily features writer for The Guardian, and she wrote about Alpine Divorce, something that you might be seeing coming up a lot on your Instagram or TikTok feeds. Alaina, I really appreciate this. It's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Libby.
I would never leave you on a trail, Alaina.
Thank you. I would never leave you either.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime right here online at KUOW.org, or of course on your favorite podcast app.